Praise be Jesus and Mary, now and forever. Today's readings present us with the profiles of two very different kings. The first reading, taken from the Old Testament book of Sirach, sings the praises of King David, a man after God's own heart, as we read in 1 Samuel 13, verse 14. While the Gospel reading presents us with a brief portrait of Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee at the time of Jesus. King David, founder of the Davidic dynasty in the 11th century before Christ, had one conspicuous fall from grace, as we know, which we heard of in last Friday's Gospel, which was when he committed adultery with Bathsheba and then he put her husband to death. But apart from that grievous error, or those grievous errors, he lived his life very much united to the Lord. The reading from Sirach, which we heard just a few minutes ago, said of David, it said, "With his every deed he offered thanks to God Most High in words of praise. With his whole being he loved his Maker and daily had his praises sung." Sirach 47, verses 8 and 9. Much of the book of Psalms, it's even referred to here, is the fruit of David's prayer life. The book of Psalms, which we still pray in the liturgy today, dates back to about 3,000 years ago, and reflects the thoughts and the heart of the king, of King David. In the Psalms, all of life's joys and all of life's difficulties are present, and everything that happens in life is shared with the Lord in those Psalms. The overarching theme of the book of Psalms, there are basically two. One is God is sovereign over everything. He truly is in control. Even when it seems like God is not in control, he truly is in control. And two, the other overarching theme is that David, the psalmist, trusts in him. David trusts in the Lord. He entrusts himself to the Lord, confident that the Lord hears and answers his prayers. Remember, God hears our prayers now, but he answers them. Typically, he'll answer them in his time. His time, which is the best time, which is, unlike our time, God's timing is perfect. We want it now. God says wait, because he has the better plan than we do. So the shining example of King David is presented to us, first of all, in today's readings. First reading, then in the Gospel, you hear the sad example of King Herod Antipas. Antipas was one of the fortunate children of Herod the Great. Why was he fortunate? Because he actually survived his father's ruthless family killings. His father killed his mother, killed his wife, and also killed 3 other sons that he had. And so Herod Antipas actually managed to escape all of that. He shared in his father's ambitions for building and construction, and he founded even a city. He founded the city of Tiberias. And like his father, he also succeeded in winning the favor of the Roman emperor. That's why he named that city Tiberias, because at the time, the Roman emperor was Tiberius Caesar. Herod was also politically ambitious, like his father, Herod the Great, as well. He desired to reign over Judah, but instead he was named by the earlier emperor. He was named by Emperor Augustus to the throne of Galilee and Perea, where he reigned at the beginning of the 1st century until about 39 AD. Herod Antipas is immortalized in the Gospel as being the one who beheaded St. John the Baptist, and he's also known for his interrogation of the Lord before our Lord's crucifixion, when Jesus refused to answer the questions that the king posed to him, and he was in turn mocked by the king himself, and he was mocked by the king's soldiers as well. You can read that in Luke chapter 23. King Herod was certainly conditioned, we can say, by his turbulent upbringing, but even in the midst of that, he, like us, he remained free. He remained free to respond to the voice of the Lord or to not respond, and with his freedom, unfortunately, he chose the latter. He chose to reject the voice of the Lord. King David and King Herod present to us two fundamentally different responses to God. King David strives to live his life in conformity to the commandments of God. He strives to live his life in union with God, while King Herod lives ruled by his passions and also by false ideas of honor and glory and security, which he inherited. A lot of these ideas probably inherited from his dishonorable father. King David relied on God's strength. He relied on God's grace to help him have victory in his life. King Herod relied upon his own strength, and he relied upon his own abilities, and in doing so, he ruined the plans that God himself had for his life. How we respond to life's challenges and difficulties determines whether or not we're going to be blessed in this life, and it also, of course, determines our eternal destiny as well. We can choose to rely on ourselves, as Herod did, or we can choose to rely on the Lord, as David chose to do. St. Therese of the Child Jesus was sent to us by God to teach us her way of seeing life and of living life and of responding to God's calling. King David himself, we can say, he was not far from the little way of St. Therese. He's not far from the way which our Lord traced out for us through St. Therese. In the next couple of days, we'll be reflecting on the spiritual life in general and also on the little way of St. Therese, the little flower in particular. And hopefully when the weekend's over, we'll understand better God's love for us and also his plan for us, and we'll be closer to living like King David and St. Therese. We'll be closer to living as they did in their lives, and hopefully we'll be further away from taking the what I call self-sufficient and God-deficient path of Herod Antipas. When you're self-sufficient, it tends to mean that you're God-deficient, and so we want to try to avoid that road. St. Paul says in Romans 8:16, verse 17, he says, "The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children." Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, co-heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, provided that we share in his sufferings so that we may share also in his glory. And may Our Lady this weekend, the Queen of Heaven and Earth, guide us as we strive to live out our calling as adopted children of God. And there's no better way of doing that, I think, than learning the spiritual childhood which the greatest saint of modern times has given to us. So hopefully we'll be able to understand a little bit better St. Therese's theology and her approach to life this weekend. Praise be Jesus and Mary.